Yes, so welcome to today's dev meeting about Supervisor and arming. So it's going to be fairly quick, I think, but maybe a bit important. We improved the Supervisor with some added safety features that, will hopefully improve the safety of the Crazefly. This development meeting is a bit about improvements we made to this. The purpose for the supervisor is then to kind of intervene and take control if a bad state happens and potentially prevent any bad state. And today we only have the arming and tumble detection implemented. So I think we're mainly going to focus on the arming part. And the arming is then a way to prevent unwanted takeoffs by enforcing a user action so that will not take off unintentionally. And this can be done using, for example, the Crazefly client or a TCP message or through the API when you use app. When a system is armed or disarmed, then this is going to enable or disable the motor output. So hopefully this will create some form of safety, but it also requires that the motor output virus works. There's also something called the idle thrust that is intended to be used with brushless setups. And this is going to, when you arm the system, this is going to make the motor spin up because brushless motors, they take a while to spin up. And this could be bad if you're flying and if the motor suddenly just stops, you can crash. So this is unwanted. So when you use a brushless setup, you want this idle thrust. So this is also going to be a good way of indicating that the system is armed. And then we have something called auto-arming, and this kind of automatically enables arming, so you don't have to have a user action. Basically, as soon as you boot up, the system's going to be armed. And this is very convenient for the Crazefly platform, which is not dangerous, but not so good for example, the Bolt if it's more dangerous. So by default, the Crazefly 2 has this enabled, but not the Bolt. Auto arming is configured in compile time using kconfig, and this config motors require arming flag. We did some state improvements lately. Like Christopher explained in about a year ago, we created a kind of a state machine that I will maybe quickly go through. So when you boot up the system, it's going to be in the non-initialized state and then quickly go to pre-flight checked or not passed. And this is where the system needs to have calibrated the sensors and things like this. And when it's passed, you can do the arming command, which is going to move it to ready to fly. The state diagram here is not complete at all, but I hope it's good enough to understand how it works. And then you can fly around in the flying state and land. And after you have landed, it's going to go back to the pre-flight checks not passed. But there was some inconvenience in the previous system. One is that previously, if you crashed, you would have to restart the Crazefly, which is sometimes maybe wanted, but sometimes inconvenient, especially for the smaller Crazeflies, where it's mainly just need to like put it in the right spot again or something like this. So we added a recovery possibility. So now you can send a recovery request, which is going to put it back so you can arm it again. And also previously when you landed and you did not have the auto arming functionality set, it would quickly go into an unarmed state, which would mean you would have to arm it again. I'm going to show you 2 videos soon how this works. But hopefully this is going to make it a bit more easy to work with the system. Yes, so Marcus kindly recorded some videos here. So let's see if you can see it. So this is an example of the arming timeout. So you connect to the Crazefly. This is then a system that needs arming. You press arming, so now it's armed. And now you can fly around a bit. And then when you stop flying and it's still, it's gonna, after 3 seconds, go back to the arming state, and this means you will have to arm it again. But if you within this 3 seconds take off again, then then you're not required to do a new arming request. And this seems to be a bit standard along other control systems out there as well. Let's go for the next one, which is recovering after crash. So in this case, this has an auto-arm system. Yeah, and you connect to it, and suddenly it flips upside down, and then it's going to end up in this crash state. And previously, you would have to reboot the system to get out of this, but now, once it's back in the kind of normal way, then you can recover it and arm it again, and then fly as before. So these are the two small improvements we did. And yeah, today I think the main purpose was to actually discuss or a little bit about arming, and if you have any opinions on the way we handle it, and maybe even some suggestions of improvements we could do. So I would say it's open for discussions, or you can just say it works perfectly as it does. Yeah, any thoughts?
So hi, maybe just my 5 cents. So we actually work with safe platforms, so we don't use arming.
No.
But we do use brushless motors. So for that reason, we might want to start using it. And personally, I think the current arming works just fine. I must say I did not really understand the 3-second timeout properly. So because
Yeah,
is it when you do auto arming, or that's when you do not do auto arming?
Exactly. Yeah, it's when you don't do auto arming and you land. Previously, you very quickly ended up in the unarmed state. Then I can't remember exactly what the landed condition is, but it's basically if you haven't had any thrust for a while, I think.
Okay.
But this was very short, so it was inconvenient, and you would have to do a new arming request, usually through the CF client or perhaps then through your app. But now it's 3 seconds, so you have some time to land a little bit and take off again, or you bouncing around.
Okay, then maybe things have changed a bit since I tried last time, but from what I remember, you would basically have a switch, which you would switch to an arm position. And as long as that is in this state, the drone would be armed. That is probably a parameter in Crazyfly.
Yes.
But so you're saying even if I set this parameter to, I don't know, 1 or armed,
yeah.
I only have a limited time to take off. Otherwise, it goes back to unarmed.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this has changed, and I think it changed by that. Yeah, changes last May already.
Okay.
Because I guess in your case, you want the possibly idle thrust to slowly flap the wings.
Yeah, so idle thrust is good for that, but then in our case, I would prefer to just have a switch, so either a parameter or a physical switch on the remote, where if it's in the armed position, it stays armed
all the time.
All the time, yeah. But okay, I'll look at the current implementation that is actually being done.
I guess by changing the timeout to something really big, you could achieve this.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Maybe, can I have a question for the recovery? I know that you wanted to discuss the arming. So is this now in the latest firmware? Because I didn't notice this function.
No, it's only in the master branch at this point. So nothing has been released yet.
Okay. But I think that's it's a good feature. Actually, for our platform, we disable the tumble detection by default, because previously, some time ago, if you would put your drone upside down, you were unable to take off anymore. It would basically get locked and you had to restart it. This has changed now, so there is a timeout, as far as I understand. So if you flip it upside down when it's not powered, when there's no thrust, it will kind of disable itself for a few seconds, but then it goes back into ready state if it's, again, horizontal as it should be. So that is really good.
Yeah, I think now with this implementation, it is, the crashed, I think that's what's changed with the implementation almost a year ago, that you entered this crash states, and the only way to get out of it was actually to reboot the system. But now you can send a recovery request.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So Yeah, and today this recovery request I think only checks that it's not tumbled anymore. But in the future you might want to check more stuff. Yeah. So I think we are getting to a state where it's getting a bit convenient to use. But yeah, there are some changes that are probably gonna mess up for some customers. But when auto arming is on and stuff, it basically works as before. But it's as soon as you require the arming, it behaves quite differently. Yeah, good. Thank you for input.
No, I guess I've tested this feature out myself, so I already know about it. But like now you're showing a Crazyflie that actually has the arming enabled. So usually this is automatic. What happens with auto arming? If you have auto arming on and the disable arm after 3 seconds, what visually happens? Will it just automatically silently go to a different state, or how does that work?
Yeah. So without testing this too much myself, actually, I think you have to correct me if I'm wrong, Marcus, that while flying, I mean, it's going to continue to be armed, but when you landed and it detects that it's landed, after this 3 seconds, you're going to see possibly in the UI that it goes to unarmed and then going to jump back to armed again. I can't remember if you see this glitch or not, or if you see this in the UI, but I think so.
I think it's really fast, this change.
Yeah.
So
maybe you don't see it at all.
I don't think so.
All right, and I guess while some people are here, maybe we can also kind of ask, in terms of what would you recommend that you would see, for instance, now it's only in the GUI of the CF client, but what would you like to see on the Crazyflie itself? Let's say in terms of its arming status, a red LED, a green LED.
Yes.
Sounds what are you guys used to?
I mean, an LED that shows the status is always nice, whether it's color or type of blink.
Yeah, we're running out of LEDs too, but I mean, when you have brushless motors, and you use the idle thrust, it's very visual that the motors spin or not when you're armed or not armed. But if you use it in another platform where you don't have this feature, then it's gonna be hard to see. So yeah, LED is our best bet as well.
Yeah, there was also sometimes with some platforms, but I think it was only with startup that you would have something like that the asks would actually make some kind of beeping sound.
Yeah.
But I don't think that has anything to do with arming. That has more to do with startup and startup.
Yeah. I think this is also usually a feature of the brushless ESC, because many of the platforms, when they're not armed, they don't send out the motor signal. So, and when you enable the motor signals, then usually the ESC makes a sound to indicate that it's getting a signal. So then you get also this but I think this differs a lot.
Right.
Any more questions or related to arming and maybe Supervisor?
So yeah, I have some questions not related to arming, but to Supervisor and to the tumble detection actually. So in the last change, I think it was May last year, the way the tumble is detected is now slightly different. And in our experience, it's more sensitive, which I think is good. But for some platforms, like our flapping wing platform, the limits are way too tight. So basically, we trigger it immediately. The default for us is we turn this off, but we would like to keep it on soon by default. So we need to adjust these. Basically, there's sort of an angle where the acceleration points, and there is a timeout for how long it stays outside of the allowed angles. And so if we make this platform specific, these settings, is that something that would be fine, or do you see a different way of implementing this for different platforms?
Yeah, my best bet is initially maybe just add some settings to the angles, but maybe in the future we might want different implementations of the full tumble detection, that it's going to be so different. But maybe first start is just to parameterize the angles. But does this work well for the flapper?
It does. It's just we need, let's say, a larger range of angles. Exactly. First, it can tilt more, and secondly, even if it doesn't tilt, the acceleration signals are rather noisy.
Yeah.
And so even when you hover, you can sometimes get a few samples outside of the allowed range.
Yeah. So you need bigger timeout as well, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say, start with the parameters, and then we'll see if we need to break out different functions for different vehicles.
And second thing is, so sometimes it's just annoying to have the tumble detection on. And that's when you fly the crazy fly manually, because you see that it's tumbled and you flip it. And so what we're thinking of just adding a parameter, like persistent parameter, where you can toggle it on or off. But then I don't know if this is something in line with your, let's say, thoughts about the supervisor. So I was just wondering, what do you think of this? I can imagine that later on there will be other, safety nets, and it might be nice to be able to actually, easily turn them on and off without having to change the firmware.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the ideas behind the design of the supervisor today, that it should be easy to then remove states for different platforms that you might need. Question is how easy it really is. But maybe I did not answer the question.
No, well, anyway, we have some ideas, so we can make a pull request and then we can discuss there whether it's easy to do that or whether this needs to be a bit more generic, such that we can apply it to other things as well. Cool, thanks.
No, I mean, the flapper is a very interesting use case in this, since it's a lot of it is different from a drone.
Yeah, and
nice, cool. Any more suggestions or anything you'd like to discuss regarding the supervisor or arming? You can use the comments as well, right?
We're right.
Yeah, the chat. I mean,
yes, I don't see anything in there.
So maybe let's wrap up.
Sure, I'll stop the recording here, and then there's going to be space for regular questions afterwards. Then.
Yeah.
Right. If anybody wants to have help.